Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. I'm Miss Lisa, and this is my YouTube channel for anything I want to talk about math and science. Today we're talking about biology, and we're talking about animal development. If you're taking this as a homeschool class, we're on chapter 5 in the Glencoe biology book, Biology and Everyday Experience, but you don't have to be doing that class if you just want to learn something about animal development and you like the way I explain things. So whatever method you're learning, be sure to read your chapter and look for other sources too, because this certainly is not going to go into depth. You can take entire classes at the graduate level on human development, just for human development of the unborn human. So there's way more to this than what we're going to hit. Excuse me, but we're going to hit the highlights. Sorry about that. I made a lot of videos today, starting to lose my voice. It's not the COVID. Okay, so animal development. A human carries an unborn child for about 266 days, approximately 9 months, but different animals carry their young for a different amount. Rats only carry their young 22 days. That's why they can just reproduce so fast. Cats and dogs, the carrying the young is about 60 days. We had a bunch of kittens born at our house, and I was looking at the cats going, oh no, how soon can they reproduce? And how long are they going to carry these kittens? How long do I have to line up houses for them? But some animals carry their young much longer than we do. Horses carry it about 336 days. Elephants carry it like over a year. You'll have to look it up. I'm thinking 2 years. So different animals, it seems like the bigger the animal, the longer it carries the offspring, it seems to me. Some animals, their young develop outside their body, the ones who lay eggs, like birds and insects and amphibians. So, but everything sort of has similar development, that it starts off simple and then adds more and more cells and gets more diversification of those cells and ends up being a more complex organism. Now, it's very interesting about people that when fertilization first happens and the egg and sperm come together, that 36 hours, that original cell divides into 2 cells and it becomes an embryo. Embryo is Latin for one teeming with life. So once you were an embryo, you were teeming with life. Then later you developed more and became a fetus, and fetus just means a young one. So fetus doesn't sound very nice, so I think that's why people think it's all right to kill them. I don't know. So when it divides in 36 hours, it's 2 cells. 48 hours, it's 4 cells, or you were 4 cells. 72 hours, you were a whole little ball of cells. And then once you'd been alive for 96 hours, you were a pretty big ball of cells. And then 5 days later, okay, so this usually happens in the fallopian tubes, that goes down out of the fallopian tube and goes, after 5 days, ends up in the uterus and implants in the uterus wall. At that time, you were a ball of cells that was hollow in the inside. And then your mom might start figuring out she's pregnant. So all of this continues. When the cells divide, it's called cleavage. It's the series of changes that take place to turn one fertilized egg into a ball of cells. And these different stages all have names like blastula. But what we're going to talk about mostly is sort of how that development goes and what all young new offspring need. And all of them need, one of the needs is protection. So how you were protected is you were formed inside your mom. So her body was protecting you. And then you get formed around you a sac, a fluid-filled sac called amniotic fluid. And that fluid protects you. It's like you were packed in water, and that helps protect you also. You also have a placenta around you, which is not thin. If you've ever seen one, they're pretty thick and strong. So that also helped protect you. Also, when you were young, you needed food. And how you got food was through the umbilical cord. The food from your mom's blood would pass through go to the placenta, and then from the placenta to the umbilical cord, and from the umbilical cord to your belly button. And that's how you got food, it's how you got oxygen, it's how your wastes were removed. Your waste was removed and on out through your mom's body. So all of those things that you had need of was provided. So in your first, so how did you develop? Okay, so after you were that ball of cells on day 5 that implanted, well, very quickly you start developing, and by day 18, so most women don't know they're even pregnant by then, your heart was beating. So that's one of the things you'll see bumper stickers that says abortion stops a beating heart, because most people do not have abortions before the baby's heart is beating because they don't know they were pregnant. Now, there are the morning after pill and some abortion forms like that, but most people don't even know they're pregnant and when before the baby's heart is beating. So there's some great pictures in your book of what a baby looks like at 1 month or 4 weeks, then what it looks like at 8 weeks or 2 months, and at 1 month, the baby has a beating heart, it has an eye, it's got a backbone forming. It definitely looks like a living organism. Maybe doesn't look very human, but it is definitely looks like some sort of living organism. By 2 months, it pretty much looks like a baby. You got a head, you got an eye, you got a body, little arms, little legs, little hands, little feet. So it pretty much looks like a baby. And I have this thing, it's called Little Feet. But I don't know if you can see it. I'll get it up close here. Whoop. See that? Let's see if I can get it. It's the perfectly formed little feet. This was taken from a cast from a real baby at 10 weeks. And you can see how little it is, but how perfectly formed your feet were at 10 weeks. And they're actually look pretty much like this at 8 weeks. You can see in the book, the cute little baby feet in the book. But you can see that they're small. You see but they're perfectly formed, and that's pretty much how you are. By 2 months, everything's there, everything's working, you're perfectly formed, but you just gotta grow and develop and change how your appearance. Of course, you don't look like that anymore. You didn't look like that when you were born. We're gonna change through our lives, and when you're 70 years old, you'll look different than you do now, unless you're 70 watching this. So things change. So you can go ahead and look through your book and see how the baby just continues to develop, continues to just grow bigger and get more sort of refined. But really from the 4th month to birth, all the baby is doing is gaining weight a lot. Everything is pretty much formed. At the start of the 3rd month is when the baby is called the fetus. Remember, embryo is one teeming with life. Fetus is just youngin'. If we were going to say it in the South, it's a young one. And then the baby's born. So once you're born, for the birth process, how that works, if it's working ideally, often things go wrong, but if it works ideally, the baby will flip, usually their head's up, and then they'll flip with their heads down. Then, so they're kind of in position, they get ready to go in that last month. And then the bottom part of the uterus is called the cervix, and it thins. It's real thick. It gets kind of thinned out. One time I heard a doctor say it's sort of like a lifesaver, that you start off with the lifesaver that's real thick, and then as you're sucking on your mouth, it gets thinner and thinner, but also the hole gets bigger and bigger. And that's what happens with the cervix. And they call it, the cervix is ripening. It gets thinner and thinner, and the hole gets bigger and bigger, and that's called dilation. And that happens when you go into labor, that the hole to let the baby out starts getting bigger, and then they'll go in, and like if you think you're about to have the baby, they'll go and they'll reach in there and they'll measure how many fingers the hole is opened, because the mom can't push the baby out until the cervix to the door is completely opened, or else it could rip it. And so when it's 10 centimeters, so about that big, then the door's open and the mom can push and the baby comes out. And usually the baby comes out with, like if the mom's laying on her back, the baby's face is down and the baby comes out kind of like that, and they grab it, cut the cord, and all free. The baby's free, ready to live its life. Sometimes babies come out the wrong position. Sometimes they come up with their face up, and that's called, I've heard somebody call it sunny side up, but it's much harder. It's much harder for the mom to push out the baby that way. But I have a friend he came out butt first. I don't know what they call that, but he was butt first. So like I said, things can go wrong. Then sometimes you have to have a C-section where they cut the baby out. I never had to have that with my kids nor me. So it's good when that doesn't happen, but sometimes it does, and that's all right too. So your belly button, your navel, is where you used to be attached to your mom through your umbilical cord. All right, let's see. Now, not all animals are like us. Some animals instead lay their eggs and the baby develops outside the mom. Birds, reptiles do that. Fish, amphibian, and many invertebrates lay their eggs in the water. Development with bird and reptiles takes place on land, not in the water. One time we were out digging in the garden and we found this little leathery egg, and we knew it wasn't a bird, it was in the ground, and we put it in a little jar to see what was going to come out. Was it going to be a snake? Was it going to be a lizard? What was it? And it was the cutest little lizard. He hatched out, and he was so cute, and we let him go out in the yard. But anyway, it was fun. Homeschool can be fun, all those sort of things, taking the time to learn about an egg you find out in the yard. So needs of the embryo is the same as your needs were. The embryo needs an oxygen supply if it's a bird. So egg shells are porous. So when you put an egg in the water to boil, you'll notice all these little air bubbles all dotting the outside of the shell. That's showing where there's porousness in the eggshell. The embryo, the chicken embryo or whatever it is, gets oxygen through the shell to the chicken. They also need waste removal. So the waste of the chicken passes out of the chicken into the egg part more for the waste removal. And they also have the eggshell for their protection. Now, frogs in their development, they do something called metamorphosis. And metamorphosis is where the thing that is growing and developing changes very much in its stages of development. We sort of stay the same. We're a lot the same. Like, say a horse, got a baby horse, it looks a whole lot like a big horse once it grows up. But frogs are different. They start off as tadpoles that look like fish, and then in the water, they swim, they breathe through gills, and then as they grow up, they lose their tail, they grow arms and legs, and their lungs develop. And then eventually they go out onto the land. So a long time ago, we had some aquatic frogs that continued to live in the water. And they were interesting, but they stunk, and on accident I killed them. I tried to put a filter in their water, and it was too much oxygenation, and I killed them by too much oxygen. I know, I didn't know. I was ignorant. I was a bad pet owner. And then one time we had this frog, we grow a frog kit, and it grew. You got it as a tadpole, and the tadpole lived, and you got to watch him. And then he crawled out onto land. He was not an aquatic frog; he was a regular frog, but it looked like Star Wars in the Dagobah system. And he had a little dome house to live in, like Yoda. And I was trying to clean it, and I was trying to get it out. Well, he ran into the house to hide, and as I got it out, the plastic house squished down into the little plastic thing, and it caught his stomach, and it split it, and all his guts came out. So I killed that frog too. I'm not gonna own any more frogs. I'm a bad frog owner. So no more frogs for me. He's buried out in my flower garden with a little rock on top. Poor little Jumpy. He died because I killed him. I'm a frog killer. I guess I'm like the Duck Dynasty guys. I'm a frog killer. Okay, so the first stage of the frog is called a tadpole. But when you start off with any organism that starts off very different, it's called the larva. So insects go through this too. A lot of insects like Bullfrogs and butterflies. There used to be a song, bullfrogs and butterflies, they both have been born again. Some little song about bullfrogs and butterflies. But anyway, about how much they change in metamorphosis. But they're called larvae, but the tadpole is the larva stage. And there's also insects that go through metamorphosis, like butterflies that go through a complete metamorphosis. A frog goes through complete metamorphosis, but there are some insects that do what is called incomplete metamorphosis, which means they change some but not as much. And you can look at those examples in your book or look them up online and you can see some of those. All right, so come back next time and we're going to go back to talking about genetics, talk a little bit more about the inheritance of traits. Why do you look like your mom? Why do you look like your dad? We're going to talk about genetics. So science is great, math is great. See you next time. Like, share, subscribe.